Over the past few decades, Capcom has tried multiple times to enter into the fantasy RPG genre. There was Red Earth, released in 1996, an arcade game that combined fighting game mechanics with RPG-like elements. Then there was Dragon's Dogma 1, released in 2012, which combined the action of Lost Planet to create jaw-dropping boss encounters within a Dungeons & Dragons-like world. But undoubtedly, the most successful of its endeavors has been Monster Hunter, a series that has quickly risen in fame due to recent entries like Monster Hunter World. But even with Monster Hunter, the desire to make a true medieval fantasy RPG that still carries Capcom's DNA has always been prevalent. And it finally feels like Capcom has accomplished this with Dragon's Dogma 2. It's a game that I can't stop playing, even with its noticeable flaws. Hi, my name is Jay, and welcome to Good Games Dude. A few weeks ago, I put out a video talking about why Devil May Cry 5 is a gaming essential. The same developers that made that game went on to develop the game that I'm talking about today, Dragon's Dogma 2. For the diehard fans who have been waiting for a sequel since the original game, this has been a highly anticipated release, as they've been waiting 12 long years. But since its release, some enthusiasm has waned a bit, especially after some controversial design decisions and microtransactions were discussed and talked about. So does Dragon's Dogma 2 actually live up to that anticipation? Find out in my review. Let's start with the good news. Dragon's Dogma 2 centers around the Arisen, a player-created character chosen by a great dragon. Being chosen by a dragon as its Arisen comes with great burdens, however, as it's up to them to seek revenge on the dragon and also take the throne of Vermont as its rightful sovereign. But along the way, others are claiming to be the true Arisen and also want the throne. It's a story about uncovering the truth and discovering what's real or not. And that sense of discovery carries over to the game's world. Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't tell the player much about its world or its mechanics. It's up to the player to discover quests, find different areas worth exploring, and how to get there in the first place. Rarely does it hold your hand, rather encouraging you to discover things on your own. It's a lot like Breath of the Wild, where you ask yourself, will this work? Then it actually does. And that's one of the best things about this game. It's been a blast finding out all of the game's secrets, hearing about what other people have learned, and then testing these things out yourself. Did you know that this game has a romance system? I wouldn't have known about this unless other people online told me about it. And it feels like I'm playing through a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, as I discover quests, play them out in a variety of different ways, and end up with many different outcomes. But exploration isn't all you do in Dragon's Dogma 2, as the game throws gargantuan-like monsters for the player to overcome. But the player has more than enough ways to take them down. Dragon's Dogma 2 has 10 different and unique classes. The standard archer, warrior, and mage are all there. But it's the later unlocked classes that are the most fun, like the game's magic archer that imbues arrows with powerful spells, or the game's mystic spearhand, which gives the player an awesome dual-bladed staff and quick teleportation abilities. And experimenting with the game's different classes is part of the game's charm. Players can switch between the different classes on a whim, with no negative repercussions. And it's what helps give the game an amazing sense of variety, as players try out all the different classes, all with fun and different playstyles that complement one another. But each class has its deficiencies, and that's where the pawns come in. Pawns are your main party members. Each player can create their own unique pawn to join them, but the player can also hire 2 other pawns created by other players. This adds up to a party of 4, all with different complementary abilities. Pawns are a system I didn't expect to like as much as I did. It's another mechanic that adds variety to the game. Being able to mix and match different pawns and getting to know them was a great joy, as I got to create memorable moments with my AI companions. But I still think the game has some more work to be done. The biggest area that needs improvement is performance. While the PC version is where the game's performance suffered the most, I played Dragon's Dogma 2 on PlayStation 5 and still had problems. The game's frame rate is not great, as it suffers from dips in combat-heavy scenarios. Rather than having buttery smooth, ultra-clear combat, the game judders, breaking up the excitement of the fight. And when entering into towns with lots of people, the game struggles to load in NPCs, often resulting in me bumping into characters not there a second ago. While these are relatively minor, my second complaint is that there isn't enough of the game. I wanted more. While I did praise the game earlier for its variety in its combat and pawn system, I can't say the same for the game's locales and its monsters. The game effectively has two distinct regions. There's the Green Hill temperate area of Vermont, ruled by the humans. Then there is the rocky sandstone area of Batal, ruled by the feline beastmen. While these places are large and do take hours to fully explore, by the 20-hour mark, I felt like I saw most there was to see. Near the end, the player also starts encountering many of the same enemy types. While the bosses are the biggest draw of the game, some of the lower enemies start becoming repetitive. At the start, you'll fight off against goblins, wolves, and lizard-like creatures. And at the end of the game, you'll be fighting off against goblins, wolves, and lizard-like creatures. Oh, but these ones are poisonous. And even though this game does have a romance mechanic, as mentioned earlier, it's not as fleshed out as I'd like it to be. The relationships and storylines formed don't end up going much of anywhere. I feel like they're too short. And I wish there was even more romance options. They don't result in that many big story moments. And I wish there was even an option for special relationships with your main pawn. This is the character that you spend the most time with, so it only makes sense if there are missions that you and your pawn can go on once you've formed a romantic bond. All of these are problems I think will be addressed and improved upon in a future expansion, which is why, as much as I love Dragon's Dogma 2, I recommend holding off on purchasing it, waiting to see if more content gets added later down the line. Much like Monster Hunter, I think there's more to add to this, and I hope the developers have more plans to improve upon it. But as it stands, Dragon's Dogma 2 is actually still a blast to play. Nothing beats that sensation of climbing on top of a giant monster, felling it with your sword, and high-fiving the other party members that help to take it down with you. Dragon's Dogma 2 is definitely a game worth your time. I just wish there was more of it. If there's a future expansion that adds more environments, more enemies, and more quests, that would be perfect. Capcom knows how to make fun, impactful action, and as I went through this, I had multiple moments where my jaw hit the floor as my character and my pawn did something cool looking. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game full of surprises, excellent world building, and an awesome combat system that I hope the developers can only build upon. Which is why I'm giving Dragon's Dogma 2 my rating of a 4 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. New videos pop up every Thursday, but in the meantime, feel free to check out my other videos, like why Devil May Cry 5 is a gaming essential, and how Chia made me feel like a little kid again.